Hello, class. My name is Julie Scott Muterspa, and this is my lesson plan presentation for the project approach. I chose the project approach because I currently work in a Montessori school in the pre-K department, and I've had some dealings with Head Start and worked with them for several years. So the project approach was something that I've learned a little bit about in classes in school, but not a lot. So I was excited to actually dive into the information and learn a little bit more about it. So here we go. So getting started, I wanted to talk a little bit about what the project approach was so that it can be better understood what I did with my lesson plans. And the project approach is a has a good balance between teacher-directed activities and lessons and child-directed activities and lessons. The plans that the teacher makes are made according to the children's interest and also the children's needs for that specific time. The project approach avoids thematic lesson plans such as doing apples for an entire week or pumpkins for an entire week because the project approach believes that this tends to be primarily teacher directed and doesn't allow the children to have the chance to explore as much. Instead, the project approach includes these themes like apples and pumpkins into their lessons throughout the entire year rather than just doing an entire week of it. Also with project approach, the teachers will act as the facilitator and the guide, and they instigate things. They're the ones that begin the thoughts and the ideas and in the beginning, and then the goal of the project approach is for the teacher to step back and then allows the children to begin to investigate through real world learning and meaningful experiences. And the project approach still allows the ability to plan with standards, which is something that I really appreciate about it because there's a lot of approaches out there that it's difficult. Like I said, I work in a Montessori classroom, and I know in the Montessori classroom it is very difficult sometimes to integrate the standards into what we do Montessori wise. So I appreciated the project approach because it was very easy to integrate the learning standards into your daily activities with the project approach. You just seem to have had more freedom. So I really appreciated that. So the project approach usually has a catalytic event that happens, which is the children start showing interest in a specific topic. And so like for this, for instance, maybe it was raining and we were outside on the playground and one of the children would start asking questions about rain, and then that grew into a topic on water, and then that from there it went to classroom like discussions or small group discussions about water. And so I would be like, okay, this is a really great topic that they're interested in right now, and so we're going to study water. And the thing that I also like about the project approach is that the flexibility that you have with planning with it, because you're not planning 6 months ahead. You're planning for the here and now. You're planning for what the kids are currently interested in, and so I really like that because I like the flexibility in it. So after the catalytic event happens and you're like, oh, I really want to start teaching this topic on water, then we would enter into the 3 phases, the KW HL. And the first one would be planning and questioning. You'd be saying to the kids, what would we do? What do you know about it? What do you want to know? And then you would ask questions like, what do you want to know about water sports? Or what do you want to know about how water helps our hygiene? Just things like that. And then after that first planning phase, you would enter the investigating and research phase. Like, how can we find out? What can we do? What things can we do to experiment and research these questions to find out what the answer is? And then the third step would be concluding and culminating. What did we learn? And that's where you would use like artifacts that you have created throughout your time span of doing this. And the thing that I like about the project approach is it's not just a week. This is something, as long as the kids are interested in learning from it, you could continue for a month if you needed to, just doing things on water, depending on, where the learning was taking you and where the kids were as far as interest. So I really loved that. And that's where the teacher, it's really important for the teacher in the project approach to take notes. They chronicle the path of the project. They illustrate the process the children went through on their project journey by using like pictures and things and journal pages that the kids have created. And also sometimes they use video, and they'll document video. And they also provide authentic documentation of the children's learning, including the standards that were covered. So they always include the standards into their learning experience. Okay, so this takes us into phase 1 of the KWHL. In phase 1, for my lesson plan, would have already happened. We would have already sat down. We've already done the planning and the questioning. We've already talked about, what do you know about water? What do you want to know about water? And then that's where their answers would have come in, to direct us into this next phase. But phase 1, there would have been a discussion with the children about what they already know about water and what they still want to know about water. This would also be the time for a field visit to a place like the water treatment plant facility, where they could learn about water purification from an expert and learn more about how water gets filtered and how we receive it into our house so that we can drink it out of our faucets, and we get it in our toilets, and we can bathe with it and brush our teeth with it. So that would be a really cool field visit to do with them. So that would have already taken place with my lesson plan. And then phase 2 which is what my lesson plan is in, would be investigating and research. And it is the stage where this lesson plan was created. And it will include role-playing, problem-solving, building replicas of what they see, measuring, drawing, and labeling. And that will also go. So this is where I would take phase 2, and we would begin making a curriculum web. And up here is where I've placed some of the standards that we would be trying to incorporate into this lesson plan. This is our topic, and these are our concepts that we came up to: the where, how, what would we do. So where do we see it? We would see it in rain, in lakes, and rivers, and oceans, and homes. How do people use it? They would use it by cleaning their dishes, taking care of their hygiene, doing house cleaning or cleaning of things, and drinking it. How do animals and plants use it? By drinking it, by breathing it, by swimming, and by bathing. And then how do recreations and sports use it? What are the uses for recreation and sports? Fishing, swimming, boating, ice skating. And then you could integrate things from each concept into different parts of your daily learning experience, into different areas. So then this would lead me to the actual lesson plan. After we've done our curriculum web and we have discussed what we'd like to learn, what we'd like to learn about, what we know about it, then we could move on to the lesson plan. And here would be what a lesson plan would look like, and the 7 domains that I would be implementing into the lesson plan would be language and literacy, math, science, social, emotional, and/or social studies, art, health, nutrition, and physical development. So for our first goal is to learn the many uses of water. And so, like I said, this would be our second phase. So this would be after we've already gone to the treatment plant facility and we've already discussed what we know about it and what we want to learn. And so implementing the standards, what we want to do is work on emergent writing and communication and use of language. So this would probably be more in the beginning of the year, where we're still learning to communicate with language, and we're just doing the beginning phases of things. So we would be labeling aquatic animals. So looking at aquatic animals and maybe trying to label it with the first initial that it begins with, we would start with, and then later on, if it was later in the year, we might move on to adding the entire first name of it to see if they can recognize it. But right now, we would begin with maybe the first name and sounding it out and trying to figure out which label went with what aquatic animal. And then the next thing would be for them to use their journals and make entries and explain connections to our topic of water into their journal entries. And that's something that could be used later on in phase 3 to show what we have done. And then for our next standard of math, compare and contrast is one, and then measurements. So one of the things would be to compare and contrast between solid and liquid, because water can be both. Water can be a solid with ice. It can be a liquid when it's just regular water. So that would be a good experiment for them to be able to do in the classroom. The next one would be with measurements. Sorry, I had to change that for a moment because it was the wrong thing. The next thing would be sorting. And for math, they would be beginning to sort categories of weather and aquatic animals. So that would be part of sorting a collection of objects. And then we would move on to science. And part of science, our goals would be observation and investigation and cause and effect. So we would explore water sources for drinking. So we'd already done that by actually going to the water treatment source. So we would continue to explore that. And we would explore the causes of pollution in our water and the effects that it has on our water. And we would use a water table for that and pour maybe some dirt into it to see what the dirt makes it look like, and just put some different things in it and talk about how that can affect our drinking water. And then we also would do observation and investigation through use of a rain gauge to measure. So we'd be measuring rain gauges and using that to investigate, how much rain comes during a day if it's raining. So that would be a really fun activity to do. And then our next one would be social, emotional, and/or social studies. So we're going to, because it would be more towards the beginning of the year, we're going to look more at the social, emotional, and we're going to talk about relational and social interactions with peers, and then also self-directed problem solving. So this would be exploration of centers and how to regulate emotions while waiting their turn. That would be like if they really want to go to the water table and somebody else is there. How are they learning how to be able to self-regulate and their emotions while they're waiting? Are they able to put their tag up to say that I'm coming to this center next and then I'm going to wait for it? Or do they have a meltdown? And then the next one, self-directed problem solving, is do they use their peers to talk about solutions and problems while building a water tunnel outside? Do they use their peers or try to figure it out first and solve it first before they come to the teacher and ask for guidance? So that's a skill that we would want to implement during this phase of it. And then the next one is art, health, and nutrition. So what we would explore with our art, health, and nutrition is safety and visual art. So we would use our art area to explore with different paint textures, use water to create different levels of paint thickness, and explore the movement of the paint as it gets thicker and as it gets more flowing as you add water. And then we also would have books in the classroom, and one of the books could be, one of the goals could be reading a book about healthy habits and how water helps people to stay healthy. And then with physical development, we would be working on their fine motor and manipulative skills that they really need at these ages. And we would do physical compare and contrast. So we would use a medicine dropper or a syringe somehow to transfer water from bowl to bowl. And that would help with their grasping. And we also would examine attributes of the water while using our five senses. So that would both include our physical development. And this is ways that I would continue to promote learning in the classroom through activities by using a prop box like this. If we wanted to incorporate the cleaning, then putting a mop bucket out with some spray things filled with water, and then some rubber gloves and some sponges for them to, practice cleaning, because we're talking about water, and one of the things on water is cleanliness. And this is just examples of different books that you can do that talks about water and talks about sinking and floating, which is a really cool experiment to be able to do with them as well. And then this is a dramatic play area. You could put a little tiny rubber pool in it with a kids fishing pole, not one that actually has a hook or anything, but one that's made for kids play. And then you could put some little fish, like I know they have one that's a magnetic we've used before, and that was really fun and really cool. And then this is something that you could do in either the water table or the or in the art section, and they just fill up bottles with colored water, and then they can squirt the colored water out into the buckets, and then they can watch how the colors join, and that would be a great way to integrate like what red and blue make and what yellow and green make. And then this is something that could happen in the water table as well, where they could build dams with Legos and then pour water on it and discuss how the water flows around it. And then this is a rain experiment where they pour rain on top of a sponge and watch it trickle down into the jar and experiment with it that way. And then one of my favorite things to do is to bring topics and our experiences into the outside, because there's so many things that you could do with that. And since this is rain, a good thing to do is to have an area set up where the kids could explore with water and buckets and different things to stop up the ends of the pipes. And they have the ability to come in and create their own pipe structure however they want to, and then they can fill it up and make predictions about where the water is going to flow out and what's going to happen. So that would be a really cool activity as well, that would coincide with the project approach. And then these are my references, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I hope that you enjoyed learning about the project approach as much as I did when I was learning about it. So thanks again. Can't wait to see everybody else's.